In this video, I go over the power rankings going into week 5 and I give an analysis of all 32 teams. I'm Chase Keller and let's dive right in. The last place team this week is the loser of the week 4 Tank Bowl, the Chicago Bears. They fell down 1 spot from last week and 2 spots since the season's beginning. Denver came back from 28-7 to win 31-28, giving the Bears the title as the NFL's worst team. Even though it was Denver's defense, Justin Fields showed a lot of promise. Even then, this should be the last season we see Fields play for the Bears unless he keeps up this good of play. The reason Chicago lost this game was the passive play calling after they went up 21. Denver capitalized on that, scored on 3 straight possessions, and then kicked the field goal to win the game. They may not have the worst roster in the league, but this coaching is not it, so maybe it's time to clean house and start over again. Coming in 31st, I have the second 0-4 team in the Carolina Panthers, falling 2 spots from last week and 12 spots from the start of the season. The Panthers remain winless after they lost to the Minnesota Vikings, losing 21-13 in a battle of the defeated. Carolina is stuck right now, as not only do they not have a first-round pick, but they also have so much struggles on offense. Bryce Young is showing improvements, I will admit, but they need to surround him better with a better O-line and better receiving targets. And overall, he just needs more options in the passing game. They have promise on defense, but with all their struggles on offense, they land in 31st this week. Moving up 2 spots from dead last this week are the Denver Broncos, who started the season 19th and have made a fan die inside, aka me. Denver vs. Chicago was a battle of the 2 worst teams in the NFL last week, and the Panthers are really only below the Broncos for record's sake. But the defense had its first good quarter of the entire season in quarter 4 versus the Bears. Ladies and gentlemen, Russell Wilson is back. But this team will never be good unless they can find a defense, and I think that starts with firing Vance Joseph. So I have tiers for these guys here, and those teams were in the F tier. We move on to the D tier here for number 29 as the New York Giants fall here in the week 5 power rankings. Down 2 spots from last week and down a massive 21 spots from my preseason rankings. They took a massive loss to Seattle this week. The Giants were very high in my projections, but it's clear that this team has too many problems. Worst offensive line in the league, defense is not stepping up, young guys are not improving like they should, you get the point. I don't want to put this on Daniel Jones, but he needs to step up. He's not playing like $40 million a year right now. Coming in 28th, I have the Indianapolis Colts, staying put from last week and rising 2 spots from the preseason rankings. The Colts almost came back to beat the Rams, but they devastatingly lost 29-23 in overtime, never having a shot on offense. The Colts have a lot of young talent starting to improve and rookie talent, specifically rookie cornerback Julius Brents, who when he played in week 3, he was pretty dang good. And that's not even the best of it. Anthony Richardson is playing like a developed quarterback, or at least more developed than anyone ever expected, including myself. If everything stays in place this year, the Colts will have a high draft pick, but I would watch out for them in future years. Plus, JT's back. Rising 3 spots from last week, the Washington Commanders find their way to 27th. Since the beginning of the year, they have risen 1 spot. The Commanders hung in with the Eagles in week 4, losing 34-31 in overtime. I think week 4 just puts levels on how good the Bills are, but this is about the Commanders. And Sam Howell took the leap that I was looking for. Terry McLaurin had a great game. De'Ami Brown looked great when he was on the field. This Commanders offense was just great. From here, the defense needs to play well again, and the offense needs to continue this momentum. Staying in the same spot as last week, the Las Vegas Raiders are 26th this week, which is down 1 spot for my preseason rankings. Vegas took a close loss to the Chargers last week, 24-17. I mean, this team's basically the same with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback. Devontae Adams carries the entire offense, he carries the passing game, and the efficiency relies on Josh Jacobs to get going. And he finally did that last week. Now he needs to keep it up. If he can, this offense could be deadly again. If not, this team will have a high draft pick in the 24 draft. After a loss to an extremely good San Francisco 49ers team, the Arizona Cardinals fall into 25th. This is equal to last week's ranking and up 7 spots from their preseason spot. I'm not sure how bold of a take this is, but the Arizona Cardinals are playing some competitive ball. On offense, they've built a very good run game behind the improvement of Joshua Dobbs at quarterback. On defense, they're a lot better than they were projected to be. I want to point out the edge rushers as they have Victor Dimukeje, Cameron Thomas, Dennis Gardeck, BJ Ojulari. This team has shown enough where I can confidently say they do not need to tank. If they play their cards right and Kyler Murray returns, even if he doesn't return, I do think this team could be a playoff caliber team. Alright, that was the D tier. We move on into the C tier, beginning with number 24, New Orleans Saints, somehow not being the biggest decrease this week. They fall 5 spots to 24. Comparing that to the season start, they have fallen 3 spots. The Saints lost to division rival Buccaneers 26-9 in week 4. Even with Derek Carr back, this team got set back a couple years by losing to the Green Bay Packers in week 3. Carr couldn't keep his defense off the field as he struggled to make a pass more than 5 yards. I'm just playing around, but nonetheless, there's no excuse for his week 4 performance. There's also no excuse for this defensive performance. 4 of the Bucs drives went for 40 yards. The Saints aren't looking great as of recent, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may be back on their way to a division title. Tied with New Orleans for the second biggest fall, the Atlanta Falcons also dropped 5 into 23rd. But that's up from their 27th ranking going into the season. The Falcons lost to Jacksonville in this season's first international game, likely to be known as the Toy Story game. In my own words, I said in my week 2 winners and losers video, I'm sorry Atlanta Falcons fans, I'm sorry I trashed your team, blah 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 blah. I'm sorry Atlanta Falcons fans, but I'm trashing your team right now. What's going on with this team? Now that the defense isn't performing like a top 10 defense, this team is immensely struggling to do anything. Desmond Ridder is not the future of this franchise, and if they want to get back to winning, they need to start at QB. The polarizing Tennessee Titans come in 22nd on my power rankings, up 2 spots from last week and staying equal to my preseason ranking. They're coming off a blowout win over the Cincinnati Bengals, who I will discuss soon. This Titans team is now 2-2, beating 2 good teams in the Chargers and the Browns, and losing games to the Saints and getting their asses handed to by the Browns. There's levels to polarization, and the Titans just may be at the top of it. They have a damn good defense, and this offense showed what they can do when Derrick Henry actually has a good game. After a big overtime win on Sunday, the LA Rams move up 2 spots to number 21. I did not like them entering the year, but they've shocked me, moving up 10 spots since season start. There's a lot to love about this Rams team. Matthew Stafford is playing great. The defense is playing better than expected. What is missing? It's the offensive line. The pass blocking is among the worst in the NFL. The run blocking is mediocre at best. But develop an offensive line and Matthew Stafford might F around and play like an MVP candidate. Despite winning their first game of the season, the Minnesota Vikings remain in 20th place from last week. Since the beginning of the season, they have fallen 4 spots. The luck of the draw no longer exists in Minnesota, but hey, at least they didn't go 0-4. There's still plenty to worry about on this team, especially on defense. The pass rush is not playing to expectations, and the coverage, I guess, is playing up to expectations, which isn't good. The offense is playing as expected with multiple bright spots all around, but that's not enough. If Minnesota can establish a run game, maybe this offense can carry them to the playoffs again. Sliding into 19th here, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, up 2 from last week and up 7 from my final preseason ranking on them. Tampa may win the NFC South this year. They're clearly the best all-around team, and their coaching is taking steps up. I do always say that Dave Canales will have the head coach job in a couple of years, if not next year. Baker Mayfield has been shocking the NFL world this season, and cooking the Saints without Mike Evans for a good portion of the game is impressive. If Baker Mayfield keeps this up, this team is easily winning the division. I can't trust him to do that just yet, but I still have the Buccaneers projected to win the division. Here's the shocker of the season. The Houston Texans have climbed up to 18th in my power rankings. That's up 4 from last week and up 5 from my preseason rankings, where I was a lot higher on them than consensus was. They blew out the Steelers 30-6 in Week 4. CJ Stroud is the name of the game as he has a record to expand. He now has the most pass attempts to start a career without an interception in NFL history. I do have a CJ Stroud film study coming out on Friday, so subscribe if you're interested. Anyways, outside of the QB play, the targets are stepping up, the defense is playing well after last week, and some veterans are really showing out to help give CJ Stroud and company a 2-2 record. That was the C tier. We move into the B tier, as coming into 17th, I have the New England Patriots. They are down 3 for my Week 4 power rankings and even with my final preseason rankings. The Patriots got blown out by the Dallas Cowboys 38-3. We need to talk about Mac Jones. He's been playing well outside of last game. What kept this team up high was their defense, and there was none of it in Week 4. Constant miscues, losses in coverage, Dak cooked, Pollard cooked, everyone cooked in this Dallas offense. There needs to be continuing talk about Mac Jones, as it's clear that when this defense does not play well, this team does not play well. I'm halfway through my video and I just realized my light settings are wrong, so A free fall for the ages. The Cincinnati Bengals come in 16th this week, down 7 from last week and down 12 for my preseason power rankings. Calling Joe Burrow a disappointment this season is an understatement. Sure, he's been dealing with injury and he struggled at the beginning of the year last year, but this is just too much. Even outside of Burrow, this offensive line may be the worst in the league, especially when protecting Burrow. For example, Cordell Volson has allowed 9 pressures, and according to PFF, he has a 5.2 pass block grade. This defense is alright, but the offense needs to take a step up if this team wants to make it back to the playoffs. Coming into the 15th spot, the Green Bay Packers actually rose a spot despite losing to the division rival Lions 34-20 on Thursday night. From the beginning of the season, they have risen 9 spots. There's a new franchise QB in Green Bay, but he didn't play well on Thursday. Constant risky throws, some of them worked, some of them didn't. He didn't cost them this game though. The Packers defense saw a true test and they did not live up to it. Missing an unusual 13 tackles is not Packers-esque, but they do move up a spot because of many struggling teams like the Cincinnati Bengals and the New England Patriots. Here we have the second team to rise 3 spots despite losing. The New York Jets rise from 17 to 14, but are down 5 spots for my preseason ranking. The Jets almost took down the Kansas City Chiefs, but came just short. It's finally here. Zach Wilson's a good quarterback. I don't want to overreact to one game, but Zach Wilson did play great. Great poise, great accuracy at all 3 levels, great job in and out of the pocket. He just had a great game. And we already know this defense is good. If Zach Wilson can keep playing like this Jets team is easily going to the playoffs. Despite losing by 24, the Pittsburgh Steelers have only lost 1 spot by falling to 13. From the beginning of the year, they have risen 2 spots. There should be a lot of concern here. They're up with the Tennessee Titans for the most polarizing team in the league. They have beaten the Browns and the Raiders and have lost to the 49ers and the Texans. There are holes visible everywhere, whether it's the interior offensive line or whether it's the coverage. And yes, I'm with everyone else. Fire Matt Canada. Moving up 3 spots to number 12 are the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have fallen 1 spot from their 11th preseason ranking, but still, they're looking bright. What a game from Jacksonville last week. They showed out against that Atlanta defense, and they finally had a good offensive game. Trevor Lawrence is my main subject here, as he finally found a way to get guys open and make plays by himself. They were starting to concern me by consistently going down my rankings, but this game is a sigh of relief. We are now moving into the A tier of teams. In 11th place, I have the Seattle Seahawks. They move up 2 spots from last week and also up 2 from their preseason ranking. The Seahawks really scared me by losing to the Rams week 1, but since then, they've made their way to 3 straight wins. The offense has looked great behind Geno Smith. The defense is a little mediocre. This is literally a carbon copy of last year. And this team sat 13th by the end of last season, so maybe they get a little lucky this year. At number 10, the Cleveland Browns remain in their ranking from last week, and they stay in their 8th spot rise for my final preseason rankings. The Browns took a huge loss to the Ravens under their worst defensive performance of the season. As I said, worst defensive performance. If their defense continues to play elite and this is just an outlier, they will keep winning games. I'm sure having no Deshaun Watson this week hurt for Browns fans, as DTR showed why I didn't like him as a prospect. 3 turnovers and not having big opportunities in this scheme is going to hurt. But with Watson coming back this week, the hurt should not last for long. The LA Chargers are 9th in this week's power rankings, up 2 spots from last week and up 3 spots from their preseason ranking. The Chargers looked great in their first 3 quarters against the Raiders, but the 4th quarter was concerning, but they still rise due to other team struggles. Justin Herbert looked great in and out of the pocket, also on the ground game, which I was not expecting. Outside of that, the run game was not good though. Defense looked up to par, and overall, once they get Eckler back, this team will likely remain in the top 10 for the rest of the year. In the 8th spot here, the Baltimore Ravens stick to their week 4 rankings. Since my preseason power rankings, they have fallen 5 spots. The Ravens were a team I was extremely high on going into the season, and outside of their loss to Indy, that's what they've looked like this year. Everything was on point in their Cleveland win, especially Lamar Jackson going for a 4-touchdown game. As I said before the season, if Lamar Jackson and company can stay healthy down the stretch, this team will be a Super Bowl contender. The NFC North's clear-cut best team, the Detroit Lions, come in 7th. That's 1 spot decrease from last week, but a 7-spot increase from my preseason power rankings. I'm gonna be honest, the only reason this team lost this spot is because of the Dallas Cowboys. But they've played pretty well these first 4 games. They did lose to Seattle in overtime, but that 3-1 record is no facade. The offense is playing lights out as expected. The defense is playing over expectations. This team overall is just playing very well. Now, they aren't a Super Bowl contender just yet, but if Dan Campbell can keep this Lions team winning, they will be by the mid-season mark. In the 6th slot, the Philadelphia Eagles show out. They dropped 2 spots from last week and have dropped 4 spots since we started this season. Philly won and still dropped 2 spots. It's a gimme when you almost lose to a team that got beat by 34 in week 3. The Eagles have their doubts here, specifically with Brian Johnson at offensive coordinator, as this offense has not looked as deadly as it was last year. The defense also showed their flaws in week 4. Nonetheless, they are undefeated, but they are the worst of the 2 undefeated teams. Falling 2 spots to number 5, the second best AFC East team comes in. The Miami Dolphins took a beating from the Bills, losing 48-20. Despite that, they've still gone up 1 spot since my preseason rankings. Miami's offense may still be the best in the league. I don't care about this game. They dropped 70 on Denver week 3. The Bills just outplayed them on defense, and that's why they won the game. My concern still stands with Miami in that aspect, is you can have a great offense, but if you don't have a good defense, you're not going to go far. That is the situation of the Miami Dolphins, who fall to number 5 this week. Coming in at number 4, the Dallas Cowboys launched 3 spots from last week and continue their rise from their preseason number 10 ranking. Their week 4 win is such a big recovery from their loss to the Cardinals. How about them Cowboys? They were phenomenal against New England, putting together a great offensive and defensive performance, and yet again had 2 non-offensive touchdowns. They now have an 83-point differential in 4 games, and that also includes that 2-score loss against Arizona, so technically a 95-point differential in their 3 wins. Everything looks great all around on the roster, and as I said in the preseason and continue to say now, this coaching needs to step up. We have 3 teams in the S tier this week, starting with a team that moved down 1 spot from last week, the Kansas City Chiefs. They did start the year in 1st place. The Chiefs by no means looked bad in week 4. Mahomes just got outplayed by Zach Wilson. My concerns about Mahomes this season just continue to go up and up and up. He did look iffy in the air last week, but I will say, he did improve his play and go back to elite play in quarter 4 of that game. The defense was fine. Zach Wilson just broke out on them. The coverage was the best part. Even on some of Zach Wilson's completions, they showed out. The Chiefs may have lost a spot, but they are still 100% a Super Bowl favorite. Running up the top of the league are the Buffalo Bills, moving up 3 spots from last week and 5 spots since the beginning of the season. The Bills lost to the Jets in week 1, but since then, they have been on an absolute tear with a point differential of 80 since that loss. The offense is crazy good, and you add that to possibly the best defense in the NFL, Whoa. Their loss to the Jets does hold them back from number 1, but even if they beat the Jets, I got a better idea for number 1. And that number 1 team is the San Francisco 49ers, spending their 4th straight week at number 1 in my power rankings. They started the season at 5 and moved their way to 1st after week 1. There isn't much to say about this team. They let their results do the talking. Their closest win was a 7-point, probably should have been 10-point win over the LA Rams. Offense is consistently on point. The defense is still playing like the best in the league possibly. The coaching is on point as well. This 49ers team is a big shot to remain number 1 this year. They are under pressure from the Bills and the Chiefs, but for now, they remain in number 1. So, these are my final power rankings here, as you can see, from 32 to 1, and that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I do have now a power ranking video coming out every week, so if you're not subscribed, you're missing out. Once again, I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and thank you guys so much for choosing this channel as your source of sports coverage. I'll see you guys in the next video.